The Grand Memorial Hall of Novaris stood as a testament to the galaxy's uneasy peace. Crystalline arches caught the light of twin moons, casting prismatic shadows across the assembled dignitaries. Admiral Lena Reyes stood at attention, her Phoenix Armada dress uniform stark against the ornate decor of the neutral world. 10 years had passed since the Silence of Sol, 10 years since 2 billion humans had perished in what the Galactic Council termed the unfortunate culling incident. Lena's jaw tightened as Ambassador Phila Zir approached the podium. The slender Novarian's iridescent skin shimmered with diplomatic markings of peace and reconciliation. "We gather to commemorate a decade of healing." Zir's melodic voice carried through the hall. Human and council species alike, bound by our shared commitment to prevent such tragedy from ever recurring. From her position near the exit, Lena surveyed the room. The Phoenix Armada had been born from the ashes of Earth's devastated defense fleet, cobbled together from colony ships and mining vessels. Now, it stood as humanity's shield, and potentially its sword. Her gaze fell upon Captain Torrin Hale, her second-in-command, positioned across the chamber. His subtle nod confirmed their security teams were in place. Ambassador Zir raised a ceremonial chalice. "To understanding between species, to the paths of peace we—" The explosion tore through the western wall of the Memorial Hall with devastating precision. Lena was thrown backward, her training kicking in as she rolled to a defensive position. Through the smoke and screams, she spotted the glint of combat drones swarming through the breach. "Secure the perimeter," she shouted into her comlink, drawing her sidearm. "Phoenix teams, protect the civilians." Bodies of both human and alien dignitaries lay strewn across the once pristine floor. Ambassador Zir had been nearly vaporized at the podium, fragments of the ceremonial chalice embedded in what remained of the diplomat's chest. As Lena advanced through the chaos, she spotted the unmistakable insignia on one of the combat drones, a rising phoenix, nearly identical to her own fleet's emblem, but distorted, wreathed in flames. Captain Hale appeared at her side, blood streaming from a gash on his forehead. "Admiral, we've neutralized the immediate threat, but there are more explosives throughout the building. We need to evacuate now." "Who did this?" Lena demanded, her voice steady despite the carnage surrounding them. Hale hesitated. "The markings suggest our own, Admiral. A human faction." Lena stared at the broken body of Ambassador Zir, the alien who had once extended an olive branch to humanity after the culling. Something hardened in her chest as she holstered her weapon. "No more," she whispered. Then, with rising conviction, "no more peace at their price." As emergency responders flooded the hall and survivors were evacuated, Lena activated her secure channel to the Phoenix flagship in orbit. "This is Admiral Reyes. Deploy all battle groups. Operation Broken Chalice is now in effect." The decade of uneasy peace had ended. In its place, vengeance would rise. Lieutenant Auric Dawes hunched over his intelligence terminal aboard the Phoenix flagship, filtering through the data streams coming in from the Novaris attack. At 32, he had been just a cadet when the culling of Sol occurred, but the memories remained vivid, the silence as Earth's communications went dark, the horrified faces of instructors as casualty estimates climbed into the billions. "Cross-reference those drone signatures with known extremist groups," he ordered his team. "I want to know who's claiming responsibility." His second, Analyst Merrick, looked up from her station. "Sir, that's the thing. No one is. The hardware configurations match a splinter group called Humanity's Vengeance, but they've gone silent. It's as if they wanted to be identified." Dawes frowned. "A false flag?" "Possibly, or a martyrdom operation." The bridge doors hissed open, and Admiral Reyes strode through, still wearing her dust-covered dress uniform from the memorial. The bridge crew snapped to attention, but she waved them back to their stations with curt efficiency. "Report," she demanded, coming to stand beside Dawes' station. Preliminary analysis suggests human extremists. Admiral, but something doesn't add up. The attack was too precise. Too theatrical. Lena's eyes narrowed. Theatrical? They wanted us to know it was humans. The question is why. Captain Hale joined them, having changed into his standard uniform. Whatever their motive, the political damage is done. 3 council species representatives are dead, including Ambassador Zaire. The Galactic Council is convening an emergency session. Let them convene, Lena said coldly. While they debate, we act, Lieutenant Dawes. I want everything on this Humanities Vengeance Group. Captain Hale, prepare the fleet. Our first target is the Melkorian communications relay in the Cetus sector. Hale blinked in surprise. Admiral, that's a council-protected installation. Seizing it would violate at least 4 treaties. Treaties that have failed to protect us for a decade, Lena countered. We need that relay to control information flow, while we hunt down those responsible. With respect, Admiral, Dawes interjected carefully. If we move against Council infrastructure, we risk confirming their worst fears about humanity. Lena turned to face both men, her expression resolute. Their worst fear is that we'll no longer accept vulnerability as the price of peace. They culled us once when we were scattered and weak. Now they'll learn what happens when the survivors unite. She moved to the command center of the bridge, activating the tactical display. The holographic projection showed the Phoenix Armada's 5 battle groups, each centered around converted colony ships, now bristling with weaponry. Battle Group Alpha will secure the Melkorian relay. Beta and Gamma will establish defensive perimeters around our remaining colonies. Delta will begin reconnaissance on these 3 targets. She highlighted worlds known to harbor anti-human sentiment, or suspected of involvement in the original culling. And Epsilon? Admiral Hale asked, noting she had left out the 5th battle group. Lena's eyes glinted with cold determination. Epsilon remains with the Phoenix. We're going hunting. As the bridge crew scrambled to implement her orders, Dawes exchanged a troubled glance with Hale. The captain's expression mirrored his own concern. They had both served under Lena when she had been a peace envoy, advocating for human integration into the galactic community. The woman before them now, hardened by the loss of her family in the culling and further tempered by the Novaris massacre, seemed transformed. Captain, Dawes said quietly as they moved to their stations. Is this justice or revenge? Hale's reply was grim. I'm not sure the galaxy will notice the difference. The Melkorian relay fell within 6 hours. Battle Group Alpha, led by the heavy cruiser Defiance, had approached under the guise of a routine patrol. The Melkorians, a crystalline species known for their advanced communications technology but minimal military capability, offered token resistance before surrendering the installation. Admiral Reyes received the news in her private quarters aboard the Phoenix. Casualties, she asked the holographic projection of Commander Voss, Alpha's leader. Minimal, Admiral. 7 Melkorian security personnel killed, 18 wounded. No civilian casualties. The relay is intact and under our control. Lena nodded, satisfied. Implement the communications protocols we discussed. I want all outgoing transmissions monitored and filtered. Priority messages from the Council worlds are to be delayed by 6 hours. Admiral, Voss hesitated. The Melkorian administrator is requesting to speak with you. He's invoking diplomatic protocols. Put him through. The hologram shifted to reveal Administrator Salo, his crystalline features refracting light in patterns that conveyed distress. Admiral Reyes, his translated voice wavered with controlled anger. This unprovoked aggression against a neutral installation violates all principles of... Unprovoked, Lena cut him off. Were you at Novaris yesterday, Administrator? Did you see what remained of Ambassador Zaire? A tragedy perpetrated by extremists, not the Council. This response is disproportionate, and disproportionate would be doing to your worlds what was done to ours, Lena replied coldly. Instead, We've seized one relay with minimal bloodshed. Consider it a proportionate first step. The Melkorian's crystalline features shifted to a pattern indicating alarm. First step toward what, Admiral? Justice, she answered simply, before terminating the connection. A chime at her door preceded Captain Hale's entrance. He carried a datapad and a grave expression. Lieutenant Dawes has completed his preliminary analysis of the Novaris attack, he reported, handing her the pad. Lena scanned the information, her frown deepening. These components, they're military grade. How did a fringe group like Humanity's Vengeance acquire them? That's what concerns us, Hale replied. The evidence suggests they had help, possibly from within the Phoenix Armada itself. Lena's head snapped up. You're suggesting treason. I'm suggesting complexity. This attack has given you the justification to implement Operation Broken Chalice, a plan only 5 people in the fleet knew existed. Are you accusing me, Captain? Her voice was dangerously quiet. I'm pointing out that someone wanted humanity to abandon diplomacy for military action. Whether they're inside our ranks or manipulating us from outside, their goal aligns with our current course. Lena set down the pad and moved to the viewport of her quarters. Beyond the reinforced glass, the vast blackness of space stretched before her, punctuated by distant stars, many harboring worlds that had stood by during the culling of Earth. Have Dawes continue his investigation, quietly. In the meantime, we proceed as planned. The diplomatic corps will be divided on our actions, identify those who support our approach, and bring them into the fold. The others are to be confined to non-sensitive areas. You're fracturing our own diplomatic service, Hale questioned. I'm ensuring unity of purpose, Lena corrected. We can no longer afford the luxury of internal debate while external threats remain. Hale stood at parade rest, his discomfort evident. Admiral, when you proposed Operation Broken Chalice as a contingency, it was meant as a deterrent, a plan we would threaten but never execute. That was before Novaris, before they showed us that 10 years of peaceful overtures had changed nothing. She turned back to face him. The culling was no accident. Torin. It was a test to see how we would respond. We chose reconciliation, and they took it for weakness. I won't make that mistake again. And if this leads to war, full-scale conflict between humanity and the Council races, Lena's expression hardened. Then we ensure it's a war they fear more than we do. As Hale departed, Lena returned to the viewport, memories flooding back unbidden. Her husband, Marco, and their daughter, Elise, had been visiting family on Earth when the culling began. The official explanation, an unfortunate miscalculation during a Council species attempt to control an invasive organism threatening their worlds, had never sat right with her. 2 billion human lives, dismissed as collateral damage. She had once believed in the power of diplomacy, had advocated for humanity's integration into the galactic community, despite the tragedy. But watching Ambassador Zaire die, the one alien who had seemed to genuinely care about human suffering, had crystallized something within her. The galaxy understood only one language power, and she would teach humanity to speak it fluently. The Phoenix Armada's strike teams moved with surgical precision. On Thalax, a Council world known for its political influence, a team led by Lieutenant Dawes infiltrated the Central Archives. Their mission extract evidence of complicity in the Novaris attack and the original culling. Security systems bypassed, Specialist Wren whispered over the tactical channel as her fingers danced across the alien interface. We have 16 minutes before the automated reset. Dawes nodded, directing his team through the shadowed corridors of the archive. The Thalaxians, a species of tall, elongated humanoids with photosensitive skin, maintained their most sensitive records in darkness, a natural security measure against most species, but one that the Phoenix strike teams had trained specifically to overcome. Target server located, Dawes confirmed, approaching a pulsing crystalline structure that served as the Thalaxian equivalent of a data core. He attached a specialized decryption device and began the extraction process. As data flowed into their secure storage, Dawes couldn't help but question their mission. If they found nothing linking the Thalaxians to either attack, would Admiral Reyes accept that? Or would the absence of evidence simply be interpreted as better concealment? His thoughts were interrupted by Wren's urgent whisper. Movement outside the archive. Security patrol. Ahead of schedule. Dawes made a split-second decision. Continue the extraction. Tycho, with me. He and the team's combat specialist moved to intercept the patrol, using the darkness to their advantage. The plan called for non-lethal neutralization tranquilizer rounds, specifically calibrated for Thalaxian physiology. They struck from the shadows, catching the three-member patrol by surprise. Two went down silently, but the third managed to activate an alarm before Tycho's round found its mark. Extraction complete, Wren reported over the comm. But we've got company coming. Exfiltration route beta, Dawes ordered, leading his team through pre-planned escape corridors. They had nearly reached their extraction point when a security barrier slammed down, separating Dawes and Wren from the rest of the team. Find another way out, he commanded the others. We'll rendezvous at the secondary location. As alarms blared around them, Dawes and Wren fought their way through increasingly determined resistance. A Thalaxian security officer appeared before them, weapon raised. Dawes fired first a clean shot that should have been non-lethal. The Thalaxian collapsed. But something was wrong. Purple fluid Thalaxian blood pooled beneath the fallen officer in quantities that indicated a fatal wound. The tranks are killing them, Wren realized in horror. Something's wrong with the dosage. Dawes checked his weapon, a sick feeling growing in his stomach. The rounds had been calibrated by Phoenix Armada medical staff experts in xenobiology. This wasn't an accident. Switch to stun batons only, he ordered, holstering his weapon. No more shots. They fought their way out, leaving a trail of unconscious, not dead Thalaxians in their wake. By the time they reached the extraction shuttle, reports were already flooding in from the other two strike locations. Similar equipment malfunctions had resulted in fatal casualties. What had been planned as evidence-gathering missions with minimal impact had become deadly raids. And Dawes couldn't shake the suspicion that someone had intended precisely that outcome. Aboard the Phoenix, Admiral Reyes reviewed the strike team reports with a stony expression. Captain Hale stood at attention before her desk, his discomfort evident. 27 dead across 3 operations, Lena summarized. All due to equipment malfunctions? The medical staff is investigating. Admiral. Preliminary findings suggest sabotage. The tranquilizer compounds were altered to increase potency beyond survivable levels. By whom? Unknown. Security footage from the armory shows nothing unusual. Whoever did this knew our protocols and blind spots. Lena rose from her desk, pacing the confines of her office. And the extracted data? Still being decrypted. But initial analysis shows communications between Thalaxian officials and representatives of Humanity's Vengeance. They were aware of the group's existence before Novaris. Were they supporting them? Not directly. It appears they were monitoring them, possibly manipulating them through intermediaries. Lena stopped her pacing. So the Council races knew a human extremist group was planning an attack and did nothing to warn us. That's one interpretation, Hale acknowledged. Another is that they were gathering intelligence on a threat, but hadn't determined its immediacy before Novaris. Always the voice of moderation. Captain, Lena observed with a hint of bitterness. While you counsel restraint, our enemies move against us. The casualties were regrettable, but they've sent a message the Council cannot ignore. Humanity will no longer be passive. Hale's expression tightened. The message they've received is that humans conduct lethal raids on sovereign worlds. The Council has called an emergency session, and preliminary reports suggest they're discussing military containment options. Let them, Lena replied dismissively. Their fleets are scattered, their command structure bureaucratic. By the time they organize a response, we'll have secured our objectives. And what are those objectives? Admiral, when does this end? Lena turned to face him fully. It ends when humanity's security is guaranteed not by treaties or promises, but by the Council's fear of reprisal. Deterrence through strength, the only language the galaxy truly respects. Before Hale could respond, Lieutenant Dawes requested entry. His expression was grave as he handed Lena a datapad. News from the colonies. Admiral, it's being broadcast across all Council frequencies. Lena activated the display to see footage of the strike team operations, not the carefully sanitized official accounts, but raw video showing Phoenix operatives gunning down Thalaxian security forces. The footage was edited to emphasize the lethal nature of the encounters, with dramatic focus on the purple blood of the fallen aliens. This is propaganda, she snarled, selectively edited to portray us as aggressors. It's having the intended effect, Dawes reported. The Council species are in an uproar. Several have begun evacuating diplomatic posts on human-controlled worlds. And our own people. Divided. Some colonies are declaring full support for the Phoenix Armada's actions. Others are distancing themselves, fearing reprisals. Lena set down the pad with deliberate calm. Captain Hale, accelerate the timetable for Phase 2. Lieutenant Dawes, I want the source of this leak identified. After they departed, Lena activated her private terminal, accessing the secure files that only she could view. Operation Broken Chalice had been designed with contingencies for every scenario, including betrayal from within. The question was no longer whether she would implement the most extreme measures, but when. The neutral trading post of Caraxes Station hung in space at the intersection of 3 major shipping lanes, its rotating sections providing gravity for a mix of species from across the galaxy. Lieutenant Dawes moved through its crowded concourse in civilian attire, his military bearing carefully suppressed beneath a trader's casual slouch. His contact had chosen the location well public enough to discourage violence, chaotic enough to avoid surveillance. He spotted her at a corner table in the station's central cantina, Commander Alara Voss of Battle Group Alpha, officially on leave, but actually serving as Lena's eyes and ears within the civilian sectors. You're taking a risk meeting me, she said without preamble, as he sat across from her. We're all taking risks these days, Dawes replied, signaling a server droid for a drink he had no intention of consuming. The Admiral trusts you. I need to know if that trust is warranted. Voss's expression remained neutral, but her fingers tensed around her glass. Questioning a superior officer, lieutenant that borders on insubordination. 27 dead Council security officers borders on atrocity, he countered quietly, especially when the mission parameters specified non-lethal force. Equipment malfunctions happen in the field. Simultaneous malfunctions across 3 separate teams, all resulting in the exact same outcome. That's not coincidence, Commander. That's design. The server droid deposited a tumbler of amber liquid before Dawes and retreated. Voss leaned forward, her voice dropping further. What exactly are you accusing the Admiral of? I'm not accusing her, Dawes clarified. I'm suggesting someone within the Phoenix Armada is escalating this conflict intentionally. The sabotaged equipment, the leaked footage, it all serves to push us toward open war. Voss studied him carefully. And if that someone is Admiral Reyes, then I need to understand why. The woman who recruited me believed in reconciliation and building a future where humans and Council species could coexist. What changed? Novaris changed her, Voss suggested. Seeing Ambassador Zier die the one alien who genuinely supported human interests. Dawes shook his head. The operation plans for seizing the Melkorian relay were drafted weeks before Novaris. The Admiral was preparing for military action well before the attack. A flicker of surprise crossed Voss's features before she controlled it. You believe Novaris was engineered to justify what she had already decided to do. I believe someone engineered it, Dawes confirmed. Whether the Admiral knew is what I'm trying to determine. Voss sat back, considering him with new intensity. Dangerous speculation, Lieutenant. The kind that gets people labeled as traitors in wartime. We're not at war yet, he pointed out. And I'm not a traitor for wanting to understand the truth before more people die. A moment of silence stretched between them, broken only by the ambient noise of the cantina. Finally, Voss made a decision. Battle Group Alpha has new orders, she revealed. We're to secure the Helios Gateway, the primary transit point between the inner and outer Council worlds. Dawes felt a chill run through him. The Helios Gateway was the most strategically valuable choke point in Council space. Controlling it would effectively split the Council's military response capability in half. That's not deterrence, he said quietly. That's the opening move in a conquest. Those are our orders, Voss replied simply. Now I have a question for you, Lieutenant. When you discover your truth, what do you intend to do with it? Dawes had asked himself the same question repeatedly since the Thalax mission. His loyalty to Admiral Reyes ran deep. She had given him purpose after the culling, shaped his career, trusted him with increasingly sensitive operations. But his loyalty to humanity's future ran deeper. Whatever serves justice, he answered finally. Not vengeance. Voss nodded slightly, then slid a data chip across the table. Security footage from the Phoenix Armory during the hours before the strike missions. It wasn't in the official investigation. Dawes pocketed the chip without examining it. Why give me this? Because I knew Admiral Reyes when she was a peace envoy, Voss said, rising from her seat. And I want to believe that woman still exists somewhere beneath the commander she's become. As she departed, leaving Dawes alone with his untouched drink, a news hologram flickered to life above the cantina's central bar. Footage showed Council species ships in defensive formations around their homeworlds, their normally disparate fleets beginning to coordinate in response to the Phoenix Armada's actions. The galaxy was holding its breath, waiting to see where humanity's vengeance would strike next. And Dawes could not shake the feeling that they were all being maneuvered toward a conflict that would leave no winners, only survivors. Captain Torrin Hale found Admiral Reyes in the Phoenix's observation deck, staring out at the swirling energies of hyperspace as the flagship hurtled toward its destination. For a moment, he simply watched her, searching for glimpses of the woman he had served under for years, the diplomat who had once believed peace was possible. The fleet is in position, he reported, breaking the silence. Battle Group Alpha has secured the Helios Gateway with minimal resistance. Beta and Gamma continue to safeguard our colonial perimeter. Delta has completed its reconnaissance of the targeted Council worlds. Lena acknowledged him with a nod, but didn't turn from the viewport. And the Council's response? As predicted, their central fleet elements are consolidating, but communications disruption from our control of the relays has slowed their coordination. Several minor species have declared neutrality, effectively removing themselves from the conflict. They fear us, Lena observed, satisfaction evident in her tone. Fear is a double-edged sword. Admiral, Hale cautioned. It can paralyze, yes, but it can also unify. We're seeing signs that historically antagonistic Council species are setting aside old rivalries in the face of human aggression. Now she turned to face him, her expression challenging. You disapprove of our course. It wasn't a question, but Hale answered anyway. I believed in Operation Broken Chalice as a contingency, a plan that would deter aggression through the threat of overwhelming response. But we've moved beyond deterrence into active military engagement without exhausting diplomatic channels. Diplomatic channels that kept us subservient for a decade, Lena countered. That asked us to accept the culling as an unfortunate accident, while denying us the means to prevent another. And now what do we ask of them? Lena's eyes hardened. Acknowledgement. The truth about the culling that it was deliberate population control disguised as an accident. And guarantees, backed by our strategic positioning, that humanity will never again be vulnerable to their whims. Hale studied her carefully. Those demands might be reasonable, but the Council believes we seek their total subjugation, or worse, extermination and retaliation for Earth. Our actions feed that narrative. Then they understand what it means to live in fear, Lena said coldly. As we have since the culling. Before Hale could respond, Lieutenant Dawes' voice came over the comm system. Admiral, we've arrived at the Thalax system. Council defensive forces are in standard formation around the planet. Lena moved to the tactical display, Hale following. The holographic projection showed the Phoenix and its escort vessels emerging from hyperspace at the edge of the Thalax system. On the far side of the planet, a cluster of signals indicated the presence of Council warships, a defensive screen, but not the major fleet concentration they might have expected. Status of the hidden base, Lena inquired. Sensors confirm its location matches our intelligence, Dawes reported. Buried beneath the northern continental shelf, with minimal surface presence. Energy signatures suggest significant activity. And our intelligence confirms this is the headquarters of the human faction responsible for Novaris. Hale questioned. Confirmed. Lena answered for Dawes. Lieutenant's team decrypted communications, showing regular contact between Thalaxian officials and the leadership of humanity's vengeance. The base was established with Thalaxian support, technical, financial, and political. Hale frowned. Why would Thalax support a human extremist group? To justify restrictions on human expansion, Lena explained. Create a human threat. Respond with security measures, classic manipulation. Admiral, Dawes interjected. Sensors detect additional vessels approaching the base. Council diplomatic shuttles. Lena zoomed the tactical display, revealing the approaching ships. Identification. Representatives from 6 Council species, Dawes confirmed after a moment. Including high-level diplomatic credentials. They appear to be convening at the base location. A secret meeting between Council diplomats and human terrorists. Lena's voice was tight with controlled rage. Further proof of their complicity. Hale studied the data more carefully. Or they could be negotiating a surrender, trying to end this conflict before it escalates further. Our strike window closes in 30 minutes, Dawes reported. Once those shuttles dock with the base, we can't target it without directly attacking Council diplomats. Lena's expression hardened as she made her decision. Prepare for precision orbital strike. Target the base and surrounding military infrastructure only. Hale stiffened. Admiral, if those diplomats are attempting to defuse the situation, then they've chosen to do so by meeting with the murderers of Ambassador Zier, on a world that helped orchestrate the Novaris massacre. Lena cut him off. Their intentions are irrelevant. The base is a legitimate military target harboring terrorists responsible for attacks on human civilians. The diplomatic ramifications will be severe, Lena acknowledged. But the message will be clear: collaborate with enemies of humanity, and no diplomatic credential will shield you from consequences. She turned to Dawes. Begin the attack sequence. Captain Hale, coordinate with the escort vessels to maintain defensive positions against potential Council counterattack. As Dawes relayed the orders and the Phoenix's weapon systems came online, Hale watched Admiral Reyes with growing concern. The calculated military leader he had respected was giving way to something colder, more absolute in its conviction. Weapons locked on target, Dawes reported, awaiting final authorization. Lena stood at the command console, her finger hovering over the confirmation panel. For a brief moment, Hale glimpsed hesitation in her eyes, a flicker of the peace envoy who had once sought understanding between species. Then it was gone, replaced by resolute determination. Fire, she commanded. The Phoenix's main batteries discharged in coordinated sequence, sending lances of destructive energy toward the planet below. On the tactical display, they watched as the beams converged on the hidden base, penetrating its shielding and vaporizing its structure, along with the diplomatic shuttles that had just begun their landing approach. In that moment, as the confirmation of direct hits flashed across the display, Hale realized they had crossed a line from which there could be no return. This was no longer a show of force or strategic positioning. It was an act of war that had just claimed the lives of Council diplomats. And Lena's expression showed no regret, only grim satisfaction as she issued her next command: open a channel to all Council frequencies. It's time they understood our terms. The aftermath of the Thalax strike rippled across the galaxy with the force of a supernova. Lieutenant Dawes stood rigidly at his station on the Phoenix Bridge, monitoring the cascade of emergency transmissions from Council worlds. Fear had become the dominant emotion, fear of where humanity might strike next. Fear of a species that would target diplomatic vessels in pursuit of vengeance. "They're scrambling their fleets," he reported to Admiral Reyes, who occupied the command chair with imperial composure. "Defensive formations around all major Council worlds. Several minor species have formally requested human protection in exchange for resource access." Lena nodded, unsurprised. "And the primary Council response?" "Still formulating. Their leadership is in chaos. 3 of the diplomats killed at Thalax were members of the Council's inner chamber. The succession protocols are complex and time-consuming." "Time they don't have," Lena observed. "Captain Hale, status of our battle groups." Hale's response was professional, despite the tension evident in his bearing. "All positioned according to Phase 2 parameters. We control the major transit points, communication relays, and approach vectors to human space. The Council's military assets remain divided by our strategic positioning." "Excellent." Lena rose from her chair, addressing the bridge crew. "We have achieved what diplomacy could not, a position of strength from which humanity can dictate its future in this galaxy. The Council species now understand that their actions have consequences, that humanity will no longer accept vulnerability as the price of peace." The crew's response was mixed. Some faces showed pride and determination, others uncertainty or veiled concern. Dawes noted the divisions, filing them away in his mental assessment of where loyalties might lie if the situation deteriorated further. "Lieutenant Dawes," Lena continued, "prepare my shuttle. It's time to address the Council directly. Captain Hale, you have command of the Phoenix during my absence." After she departed the bridge, Hale approached Dawes' station, speaking in low tones. "Did you review the security footage?" Dawes nodded imperceptibly. "It confirms my suspicions. The equipment was sabotaged, but not by the Admiral." "Who?" "Dr. Saren, Chief Xenobiologist. The footage shows him accessing the tranquilizer compounds outside of standard protocols." Hale absorbed this with a grim expression. "Saren lost family in the culling. He's been vocal about human supremacy theories." "There's more," Dawes continued quietly. "I traced his communications. He's been in contact with remnants of humanity's vengeance, the same group allegedly responsible for Nevaris." "Allegedly?" "I'm no longer convinced they acted alone. The evidence suggests coordination between extremist elements within our own ranks, and possibly Council species with an interest in provoking conflict." Hale's expression darkened. "You're suggesting we're being manipulated into this war by whom?" "That's what I haven't determined yet. But the Admiral's actions are playing directly into their strategy, escalating tensions, removing diplomatic options, forcing military confrontation." "Or she's simply doing what's necessary to secure humanity's future," Hale countered, though his tone lacked conviction. "The question is, what do we do with this information?" Dawes met his gaze steadily. "That depends on what happens at the Council meeting. If the Admiral pushes for reasonable security guarantees, we support her. If she demands capitulation or threatens further strikes." He left the implication hanging between them. Neither man needed to articulate the word that described countermanding a commanding officer's orders during military operations. Mutiny. The Galactic Council's emergency chamber on the neutral station of Concordia had been designed for deliberation, not confrontation. Its circular arrangement of delegate podiums surrounded a central speaking platform, a physical manifestation of the Council's foundational principle that all species held equal voice in galactic governance. Today, that principle faced its greatest test as Admiral Lena Reyes strode onto the central platform, flanked by a minimal security detail. The chamber, normally filled to capacity with representatives from dozens of species, was half empty. Many delegates had fled to their homeworlds after the Thalix strike, fearing human reprisals. Those who remained watched her with a mixture of fear, anger, and wary respect. The Phoenix Armada's swift military actions had shattered assumptions about humanity's capabilities and resolve. Species that had dismissed humans as a minor power now faced the reality that this supposedly primitive race had outmaneuvered the combined Council forces. Acting High Counselor Zentara, a Melkorian whose crystalline features were set in patterns of formal disapproval, activated the translation fields. Admiral Reyes, you stand before this council as an aggressor who has violated galactic law, seized neutral installations, conducted military strikes against sovereign worlds, and most grievously, targeted diplomatic vessels protected by interspecies conventions. I stand before this council as the representative of a species that suffered the greatest crime in galactic history, Lena countered, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. 2 billion human lives extinguished in what you termed an unfortunate culling incident. 10 years of obfuscation, denial, and patronizing assurances while you secretly supported extremist elements within our own population to justify restrictions on our development. Murmurs rippled through the assembled delegates. Zentara's crystalline features shifted to patterns indicating caution. These are serious accusations. Admiral, do you offer evidence? The evidence was presented to your diplomats on Thalax, Lena replied coldly. Before they perished alongside the terrorists, they were meeting. But I did not come here to rehash past crimes. I came to establish the terms of our future relationship. Terms, Zentara's translation, carried notes of indignation. The Phoenix Armada's actions have placed humanity outside the bounds of Council authority. You are in no position to dictate terms. Lena smiled thinly. Your defensive fleets are scattered and isolated by our control of key transit points. Your communication networks function at our discretion through the relays we've seized. 3 of your inner chamber members are dead, and your succession protocols prevent effective leadership for at least 30 standard days. I believe I am in precisely the position to dictate terms. She activated a holographic display, projecting a galactic map with highlighted sectors. These regions will be recognized as human sovereign space, with full mining, colonization, and development rights. Our vessels will have unrestricted transit through all Council-controlled sectors. A joint commission with equal human representation will investigate the culling of Earth and hold accountable those responsible. The delegates' reactions ranged from outrage to resigned acceptance. A Thalaxian representative rose from his podium, elongated fingers trembling with emotion. This is not negotiation. This is conquest by another name. This is deterrence, Lena corrected. Humanity has demonstrated its capability and resolve. We have shown restraint by targeting military and terrorist installations rather than civilian populations' restraint, not shown to us during the culling. These terms establish a balance of power that ensures such atrocities never recur. And if we refuse, Zentara asked, though the answer was evident in the resigned patterns flickering across his crystalline form. Lena's expression hardened. Then we continue to demonstrate our resolve until you reconsider. The Phoenix Armada has identified 37 critical infrastructure nodes across Council space. The Thalix base was one. Consider carefully whether the others are worth sacrificing to maintain the fiction of your superiority." Silence fell over the chamber as the implications settled upon the delegates. Lena had not merely threatened further military action. She had revealed the depth of human intelligence gathering and strategic planning. The message was clear. Humanity had been preparing for this confrontation long before Novaris. A new delegate rose, a representative of the Ardanian collective, a species known for pragmatic diplomacy. "Admiral Reyes, you have shown your people's strength. Now show wisdom. Accept third-party mediation for these terms. Allow time for proper consideration, and withdraw your forces from the Helios Gateway as a gesture of good faith." For a moment, something flickered in Lena's eyes, a recognition of the diplomatic opening being offered, a path toward negotiation rather than ultimatum. Then her comm unit chimed softly, and she glanced at a message that caused her expression to harden once more. "There will be no mediation," she declared. "Humanity has spent a decade accepting half measures and empty promises, while the architects of the culling went unpunished. Your time for consideration begins now and ends in 48 standard hours. My forces remain in place until our terms are accepted in full." As murmurs of protest rose from the delegates, Lena turned to depart. The Ardanian representative called after her, "Is this truly justice you seek, Admiral? Or have you become what you claim to despise those who would sacrifice peace for power?" Lena paused at the chamber's exit, not turning back as she delivered her final words. When peace requires the sacrifice of justice, it is merely submission by another name. Humanity will no longer submit. Aboard the Phoenix, Captain Hale received the encrypted transmission from Lieutenant Dawes with growing alarm. The data was irrefutable communications logs, financial transactions, and meeting records connecting Dr. Saren not only to the sabotaged equipment, but to a network of conspirators spanning both human and council species ranks. "The consortia," Hale murmured, recognizing the pattern emerging from the evidence. Rumors had circulated for years about a cross-species alliance of powerful interests that operated beyond official channels, corporate entities, political dynasts, and military hardliners united by their belief that controlled conflict served their respective agendas. If Dawes's evidence was accurate, the Novaris attack had been engineered by these elements to provoke precisely the response Admiral Reyes had delivered: military action that would reset the galactic power balance while creating lucrative opportunities for those positioned to profit from prolonged tension. The question was whether Lena herself was party to the conspiracy or merely its unwitting instrument. The woman Hale had served under for years would never have collaborated with those who sought to manipulate humanity for their own gain. But the commander she had become, shaped by grief and hardened by a decade of perceived injustice. His tactical display chimed with a priority alert. Admiral Reyes's shuttle was returning from the council meeting. Her preliminary report indicated the terms had been delivered as planned, with a 48-hour deadline for compliance. Hale made his decision. Rising from his chair, he activated the secure channel to Battle Group Delta, currently under the command of his most trusted colleague, Commander Ellis. "Implement contingency protocol Firebreak," he ordered, using the code they had established for this eventuality. "Authentication, Hale Omega 73. "Understood, Captain." Ellis responded without hesitation. "Firebreak protocols engaged. May I ask the trigger condition?" "Consortia confirmation," Hale replied grimly. "Lieutenant Dawes has verified their involvement in Novaris and the subsequent escalation. The Admiral's judgment may be compromised." A moment of silence followed as Ellis processed the implications. "Time frame for resolution. The Council has 48 hours to respond to our terms. We have considerably less to determine whether we're fighting for justice or serving someone else's agenda." As he terminated the connection, Hale steeled himself for what would come next. Firebreak wasn't merely a contingency. It was a failsafe designed to prevent a rogue commander from committing humanity to a course that served hidden interests rather than humanity's true security. Whether Admiral Reyes had become that commander remained to be seen. But the evidence Dawes had uncovered suggested forces were at work that extended far beyond a simple cycle of vengeance and deterrence. And Hale had sworn an oath to protect humanity, even from itself. Admiral Reyes's shuttle docked with the Phoenix amid standard protocols. But Lena immediately sensed something was amiss. The honor guard that greeted her was composed entirely of Marines loyal to Captain Hale, and Lieutenant Dawes was conspicuously absent from the reception party. "Welcome back, Admiral." Hale greeted her with formal correctness. The Council's response. "As expected," Lena replied, studying him carefully. "Fear disguised as outrage, followed by attempts to delay the inevitable. They have 48 hours to accept our terms. And if they choose war instead, then they will learn why that is the wrong choice." She gestured for her aides to continue to the bridge, while she and Hale remained behind. Once they were alone, she confronted him directly. "You've implemented firebreak, haven't you?" If Hale was surprised by her awareness, he didn't show it. "Yes, Admiral." "On what grounds?" "Evidence of third-party manipulation in the Novaris attack and subsequent escalation. Lieutenant Dawes has identified a consortia network spanning both human and Council interests, working to engineer this conflict for their own purposes." Lena's expression remained impassive. "And you believe I'm part of this conspiracy?" "I believe your judgment may be influenced by it," Hale answered carefully. "The Admiral Reyes I served under for years would have recognized the difference between justice and the course we're now pursuing." "And what course is that, Captain?" "Vengeance without limitation. Deterrence that verges on domination. Actions that serve the consortia's interest in perpetual tension rather than humanity's need for genuine security." Lena studied him for a long moment, then gestured for him to follow her to a secure briefing room, adjacent to the docking bay. Once inside, she activated the privacy fields that would prevent any surveillance. "Do you know why I created Operation Broken Chalice, Torin?" she asked, using his first name for the first time since Novaris. "As a contingency," he answered. "A deterrent we would threaten but never implement." "No." She shook her head. "I created it because I discovered evidence of the consortia 3 years ago, fragmented, inconclusive, but compelling. I needed to understand how deep their influence ran, who they controlled, what they truly wanted." Hale's expression shifted to cautious interest. "You were investigating them." "I still am," Lena confirmed. Operation Broken Chalice wasn't merely a military strategy. It was a probe designed to force the consortia's agents to reveal themselves under pressure. Novaris accelerated my timeline, but it didn't change the fundamental approach. You knew about the attack in advance. "I suspected something was coming." Ambassador Zier had begun providing me with information about Council species members of the consortia. His death was convenient for those who wanted to eliminate both a source of intelligence and a genuine advocate for human interests. Hale processed this revelation with growing uncertainty. "If what you're saying is true, then our current actions, the seizure of strategic points, the ultimatum to the Council, are designed to appear as vengeance-driven aggression while actually positioning us to neutralize the consortia's power centers." Lena finished for him. "The 37 targets I mentioned to the Council, they're not random infrastructure, they're consortia operational nodes disguised as legitimate facilities." "Then, why not share this with your senior officers? Why let us believe you'd abandon diplomacy for military solutions?" Lena's expression hardened. "Because I didn't know which of you might be compromised. The consortia's reach extends throughout both human and Council hierarchies. Only by appearing to embrace a hardline approach could I identify those who would either enthusiastically support extremism or actively work to undermine it. And Dr. Sarin, the sabotaged equipment, A test I didn't anticipate, but that revealed a consortia agent within our ranks. Lena acknowledged. His actions accelerated events beyond my planned timeline, forcing me to adjust. Hale studied her carefully, weighing her words against the evidence Dawes had uncovered. If what you're saying is true, then the council meeting was theater, Lena confirmed. My actual terms were delivered privately to council members I've identified as independent of consortia influence. The public ultimatum serves to maintain my cover while we complete the final phase. Which is, Lena activated the briefing room's tactical display, revealing a complex operation plan codenamed Phoenix Rebirth. A coordinated strike against all identified consortia leadership and infrastructure, conducted simultaneously by trusted elements within both human and council forces. The Thalax operation was a test run, eliminating a consortia cell while maintaining the appearance of human aggression. Hale examined the operation details with growing realization. This would require council cooperation at the highest levels, which I've been cultivating for years, through channels even my own diplomatic corps doesn't know exist, Lena explained. Ambassador Xire was my primary contact, but not my only one. There are those within the council who recognize the consortia threatens all species sovereignty, not just humanity's. For several moments, Hale absorbed the implications of what she'd revealed. If true, it meant Admiral Reyes had been playing a far more complex game than anyone had realized, presenting herself as a vengeance-driven commander, while actually working toward a more subtle and far-reaching justice. "How can I verify this?" he asked finally. "Lieutenant Dawes's evidence points to consortia manipulation, but not to your counter-operation." Lena reached into her uniform and withdrew a small data crystal. "This contains my secure communications with Council allies, the full Phoenix Rebirth operational plan, and intelligence on known consortia members. It's coded to your biometrics only." She held it out to him, adding, "Firebreak was designed as a failsafe against a commander who had lost perspective. I'm entrusting you to determine whether that commander is me." In the secure analysis lab, deep within the Phoenix's intelligence section, Lieutenant Dawes worked feverishly to process the data Crystal Captain Hale had provided. If its contents were authentic, it would transform their understanding of Admiral Reyes's actions and the broader conflict they had been thrust into. "Verification complete," he reported as Hale paced behind him. "The communications are genuine. Authentication protocols confirm they originated from the identified council members and were received by the Admiral's personal encryption system." "And Phoenix Rebirth?" Hale asked, tension evident in his voice. "A masterpiece of strategic planning," Dawes admitted, with professional admiration. "Simultaneous strikes against 53 consortia facilities and leadership compounds, coordinated between trusted human and council forces. If successful, it would effectively decapitate their organization while revealing their existence to the broader galactic community." Hale studied the operational details displayed on the lab's main screen. "The timing. Scheduled to execute 12 hours from now, just as the Council's official response to our ultimatum is due. The public confrontation provides cover for the actual operation, and our forces battle groups Alpha through Delta. Their strategic positioning makes sense now," Dawes realized. "They're not just placed to threaten Council worlds. They're positioned to neutralize specific consortia assets while blocking potential escape vectors for high-value targets." Hale's expression remained troubled. "If this is legitimate, the Admiral has been running a deep cover operation for years without informing her senior staff. That's not just unorthodox, it's a fundamental breach of chain of command." "Unless she couldn't trust the chain of command," Dawes pointed out. "Dr. Saren's actions prove the consortia had penetrated our ranks. How many others might be compromised?" Before Hale could respond, the lab's secure comm system activated with a priority alert. Admiral Reyes's voice came through with uncharacteristic urgency. "Captain Hale, Lieutenant Dawes, report to the bridge immediately. We have a situation. They found the bridge in a state of controlled chaos. Officers moving with purpose between stations as tactical displays flickered with incoming data. Admiral Reyes stood at the command center, her expression grim. Battle Group Delta reports they're under attack. She informed them without preamble. Commander Ellis's flagship has been disabled by what appears to be internal sabotage, followed by coordinated strikes from unmarked vessels. Consortia, Hale questioned. Almost certainly, Lena confirmed. They must have detected our preparations for Phoenix rebirth. They're moving to eliminate our operational capability before we can strike. Other battle groups. Alpha and Gamma report similar sabotage attempts, but their security protocols contain the damage. Beta is engaged with hostile forces near the Helios Gateway. Dawes studied the tactical display with growing alarm. Admiral, these attack patterns, they're targeting our command and control systems specifically. Someone provided them with detailed knowledge of our security protocols. Dr. Saren wasn't working alone, Lena concluded. Captain, I need firebreak suspended. We can't afford divided command while under direct attack. Hale hesitated only briefly before nodding. Authentication. Hale Omega-73. Suspend firebreak protocols. All battle groups acknowledge Admiral Reyes's direct command authority. Effective immediately. As confirmation signals appeared on the tactical display, Lena turned to address her bridge crew. The Phoenix Armada faces a threat greater than any Council fleet and organization that has manipulated both humans and Council species for its own profit and power. Operation Phoenix Rebirth is now in effect. All units will execute their assigned strikes as planned, regardless of ongoing attacks against our forces. She activated the fleet-wide communication system, her voice carrying to every vessel under her command. This is Admiral Reyes. For years, we have prepared for this moment, the opportunity to secure not just humanity's future, but justice for all species manipulated by the Consortia. Today, we strike not for vengeance, but for freedom from those who would sacrifice peace for profit and power for its own sake. As her words echoed through the fleet, Lena turned to Hale and Dawes. Captain, coordinate our battle group's responses to the Consortia attacks. Lieutenant, transmit the final authentication codes to our Council allies. Confirm that Phoenix Rebirth proceeds despite the Consortia's preemptive strike. The next 12 hours would determine whether Admiral Lena Reyes would be remembered as the commander who led humanity into destructive vengeance, or the visionary who recognized that true security required justice for all species. As the Phoenix accelerated toward its designated target, the Consortia's primary command node, disguised as a luxury resort on the neutral world of Caldera, the line between those two legacies had never seemed thinner. The battle for Caldera unfolded with brutal efficiency. From the Phoenix's command bridge, Admiral Reyes directed the coordinated assault against the Consortia's hidden headquarters. What appeared from orbit as an exclusive retreat for the galaxy's elite was, in reality, a fortress concealing the organization's central leadership and data repositories. First wave has breached the outer defenses, Lieutenant Dawes reported, monitoring the tactical feed from the strike teams. Resistance is heavy but fragmented. They weren't expecting a direct assault. And our Council allies, Lena asked. Confirmed strikes against 37 of the 53 designated targets. Captain Hale answered. The remaining operations are proceeding but delayed by Consortia counterattacks. Lena studied the strategic display with cool calculation. The Phoenix Rebirth operation was succeeding, but at a cost. Battle Group Delta had lost 3 vessels to the initial Consortia ambush, and reports from across the galaxy indicated civilian casualties at several strike locations where fighting had spilled beyond containment zones. The price of justice was proving higher than she had anticipated. Admiral, Dawes called urgently. Priority transmission from the strike team leader on Caldera. They've secured the central data core but encountered unexpected resistance in the executive levels. Put it through, Lena ordered. The holographic display flickered to life. showing Commander Voss in combat armor, her face streaked with grime and determination. "Admiral, we've identified the Consortia Leadership 5 representatives from each major species, including humans. They're holed up in a hardened bunker with automated defenses. We can breach it, but not without significant casualties." "Do they know they've been identified?" Lena questioned. "Affirmative. They're requesting terms." A moment of silence fell over the bridge as the implications settled. The Consortia leaders, architects of manipulation that had cost countless lives across multiple species, were offering to negotiate rather than face justice. "What are their terms?" Lena asked, her voice carefully neutral. "Immunity from prosecution in exchange for their data archives, detailed records of all Consortia operations, agents, and resources," Voss reported. "They claim the information would allow us to dismantle their entire network without further bloodshed." Captain Hale moved to Lena's side, speaking quietly. "It's a viable option, Admiral. The archives would be invaluable for cleanup operations, and we avoid making martyrs of the leadership. Or we legitimize the idea that those with enough power can escape consequences," Lena countered. "That justice applies only to those without the leverage to evade it." "The same justice you sought for the culling," Hale reminded her. "Is vengeance against these few worth potentially losing the information that could prevent another consortia from rising?" Lena's expression hardened. "This isn't about vengeance, Captain. It's about establishing that no one, regardless of species, wealth, or influence, stands above accountability for their actions." She turned back to Commander Voss's hologram. "Their terms are rejected. They will surrender unconditionally to face trial before a joint Human Council tribunal, or they will be treated as hostile combatants. Those are the only options." "Understood, Admiral," Voss acknowledged, preparing for final assault. As the transmission ended, Lieutenant Dawes approached with a troubled expression. "Admiral, we're receiving reports from multiple strike locations. The Consortia is activating sleeper agents within civilian populations, creating diversionary attacks to draw our forces away from primary targets." "Casualties?" Lena asked sharply. "Rising," Dawes confirmed grimly. "Predominantly civilian. They're targeting public gathering places, transportation hubs, maximum impact with minimal resources." The weight of command settled heavily on Lena's shoulders. The Consortia was following the playbook she had anticipated, using innocent lives as shields and leverage, forcing her to choose between completing the mission and minimizing civilian casualties. "Divert secondary strike teams to civilian protection," she ordered, after a moment's consideration. "Primary teams maintain focus on Consortia targets. Captain Hale, contact our Council allies, request additional resources for civilian evacuation and medical support." "And the Caldera operation?" Hale questioned. "Proceeds as planned," Lena confirmed. "Commander Voss has her orders." As the bridge crew scrambled to implement her directives, Lena moved to the viewport, gazing out at the distant pinpoint of light that was Caldera. The final confrontation with the Consortia leadership represented everything she had worked towards since discovering their existence: the opportunity to bring true justice for the culling, and all the manipulations that had followed. Yet the cost of that justice continued to mount, not just in military casualties, which had been anticipated and accepted, but in civilian lives caught in the crossfire of a conflict they never knew existed. Was this the legacy she wished to leave, security purchased through bloodshed? However justified the cause, the questions that had haunted Captain Hale now echoed in her own mind. At what point did the pursuit of justice become indistinguishable from the vengeance she claimed to reject? Her comm unit chimed with a priority alert from Commander Voss. "Final assault commencing. Bunker breached. Engaging Consortia leadership." The die was cast. Whatever came next would define not just Admiral Lena Reyes's place in history, but humanity's role in the galactic community for generations to come. The Grand Hall of the Galactic Council stood in silence as Admiral Lena Reyes approached the central podium. Unlike her previous appearance, when half the chamber had been empty with fear. Today, every delegation was present, representatives from all council species alongside human colonial officials. 2 weeks had passed since Operation Phoenix Rebirth. 2 weeks of revelations as the consortia's networks were exposed, their agents identified, their decades of manipulation laid bare before a stunned galactic community. The evidence recovered from Caldera and other strike locations had confirmed what many had suspected, but few had dared articulate, that an organization spanning species and sectors had engineered conflicts and crises to maintain their own power and profit. Including, most damning of all, the culling of Earth. Admiral Reyes, acting High Counselor Zentera, acknowledged her. Crystalline features, set in formal patterns. The Council recognizes your request to address this assembly. Lena stood before them, not in her military uniform, but in the formal diplomatic attire of a human envoy, a deliberate choice that signaled her purpose. Captain Hale and Lieutenant Dawes flanked her, similarly attired. "Counselors," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. 2 weeks ago, I stood in this hall and delivered an ultimatum born of vengeance and fear. Today, I come before you with a different purpose, to acknowledge the cost of that approach and propose a new path forward. Murmurs rippled through the assembled delegates as she continued. Operation Phoenix Rebirth succeeded in its primary objective, the dismantling of the consortia organization that had manipulated both human and council species for generations. The evidence we recovered confirmed their responsibility for numerous atrocities, including the culling of Earth that claimed 2 billion human lives. She paused, allowing the weight of this confirmation to settle across the chamber. Justice has been served for those crimes. The consortia leadership captured at Caldera will stand trial before a joint tribunal. Their networks have been exposed, their resources seized. But this justice has come at a terrible price: military and civilian casualties across multiple worlds, trust shattered between species that should be allies, fear replacing diplomacy as the foundation of our interactions. Lena's gaze swept across the chamber, meeting the eyes of delegates who had once trembled at humanity's apparent aggression. I bear responsibility for that cost. In my determination to expose the consortia, I employed methods that mirrored their own manipulation, misdirection, the cultivation of fear as a tool. I allowed myself and my forces to be seen as driven by vengeance rather than justice, believing the end would justify the means. She activated a holographic display, showing footage from the final assault on the consortia bunker on Caldera. The images showed Commander Voss leading her strike team into the fortress, engaging automated defenses, and finally confronting the consortia leadership, 5 representatives from each major species, surrounded by wealth and technology beyond most citizens' imagining. The consortia leadership offered a deal: immunity in exchange for information. I rejected those terms, insisting on accountability regardless of their power or influence. When Commander Voss breached their bunker, they triggered a final contingency, a dead man switch designed to destroy their data archives rather than allow them to be captured. The footage showed the desperate battle that followed Phoenix Armada troops fighting to secure the archives, while consortia leaders attempted to activate the destruct sequences. In that moment, Lena continued, Commander Voss made a choice I had been unwilling to make. She offered the consortia leaders terms: their lives in exchange for the archives. They accepted, and as a result, we obtained the evidence needed to dismantle their entire network without further bloodshed. She deactivated the display, facing the Council directly. Commander Voss disobeyed my direct order, choosing mercy over absolute justice when the cost became too high. Her wisdom exceeded my own, and for that reason, I am here today not to demand terms, but to propose partnership. From within her diplomatic robes, Lena withdrew a data crystal and placed it on the podium before her. This contains a complete record of all consortia operations, agents, and resources. It belongs not to humanity alone, but to all species affected by their manipulation. I propose the establishment of a joint commission with equal representation from all council members and human colonies to oversee its analysis and the implementation of safeguards against similar threats in the future. The chamber had fallen completely silent, delegates leaning forward in their seats as she delivered her final words. The culling of Earth cannot be undone. The lives lost, human and alien alike, in the recent conflict cannot be restored. But we can choose what rises from these ashes: continued fear and suspicion, or a new understanding built on mutual security and genuine respect. She stepped back from the podium, waiting as the council delegates conferred among themselves. Captain Hale moved to her side, speaking quietly. You realize this means relinquishing direct control of the strategic positions we've secured. Yes, Lena acknowledged. But maintaining them through force would only perpetuate the cycle the consortia created. True security can't rest on fear alone. After several minutes of deliberation, High Counselor Zentara approached the podium, crystalline features arranged in patterns few humans could interpret. Admiral Reyes, your proposal is unexpected. The Council acknowledges the evidence of consortia manipulation and accepts that a joint approach to security serves all our interests. The Councilor's patterns shifted to what Lena recognized as cautious optimism. We propose an expansion of your recommendation, not merely a commission to analyze the past, but a permanent integrated security council with authority to prevent such manipulation in the future. Equal representation, shared resources, mutual defense obligations. Lena felt a weight lifting from her shoulders, the burden of vengeance she had carried since the culling, transmuted now into something closer to the peace she had once sought as an envoy. The Phoenix Armada would be honored to serve as part of such an integrated force, she responded. As delegates rose in tentative approval, the Ardanian representative who had offered mediation during her previous appearance approached. Admiral, when you delivered your ultimatum, I asked whether you sought justice or had become what you claimed to despise. Today, you have answered that question in the most meaningful way possible, by choosing a future over a past. Lena inclined her head in acknowledgement. A wise commander once told me that true security cannot rest on unending vengeance. It took me too long to understand the wisdom in those words. And now, the Ardanian asked. Lena glanced at Captain Hale and Lieutenant Dawes, who had stood by her through the darkest moments of their campaign, offering the moral compass she had sometimes lost sight of in her determination to bring the consortia to justice. Now, we build something worthy of those we lost, she answered. Not a peace born of fear, but one forged in the recognition that justice serves all species, or it serves none. As she departed the council chamber, Admiral Lena Reyes caught sight of her reflection in the polished stone walls. No longer the peace envoy she had once been, nor the vengeful commander she had allowed herself to become, but something new, a leader who had learned that the greatest strength lay not in the fear one could inspire, but in the trust one could build. Outside, the statues commemorating past peace treaties stood newly unveiled, freed from the ice that had encased them, a symbol of alliances broken and now, perhaps renewed with greater wisdom on all sides. The Phoenix would rise again, not from ashes of destruction, but from the shared commitment to prevent such fires from ever being lit again.